Okay, so we're going to look at the first 7 exercises tonight. And I haven't looked at these positions. Alex created the material. Sorry, I have looked at them, but I don't know the solutions. I haven't spoken to him about them. So I thought it was quite good for me to give my opinions and then for you to say what you think, and then we can put the engine on afterwards. I haven't put the engine on these. So this position is from the challengers, and it's Katie's game against Argowell. And we're evaluating the position with black to play. So let's flip it around so we can see it from black's perspective. And from what I've heard, most of you have done this work in advance, which is great. So what you could do is you can privately message me your opinions on this position and what you thought, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts. Like I say, I didn't write this material, Alex wrote this material. So all I've done is I've just gone and had a look at the position myself and written my thoughts. So it'll be interesting to see what people think and compare it to what I think. And this will kind of highlight what we should be thinking about in these positions. So if you could message me your thoughts on this. I don't mind actually if it's just written to everyone, because you're all going to have your own opinion on this. So yeah, just give you a minute to write what you're thinking about this, and then I'll give you what I'm thinking about this, and then we'll discuss some of the key themes in this position. So black to play. I'm not really looking for a move. I'm just looking for what you think is important in this position and maybe a conclusion about who's better. So far, I've got Fork Power saying white slightly better. Bodhana saying some moves, Queen E7, 92, E4, Knight B3, so 98, then 96. Okay, interesting. Gregory says he thinks white's a little better. Try and give me some more reasoning why you think white's better. Kushal thinks white's better. I'm going to wait for some more answers before we go through this. Jane, I think white is slightly better because his position is more open and black has an annoying bishop on c8. Yeah, that bishop definitely comes into this. I was thinking about that when I was looking at the position. Charlie says white's slightly better as they have the bishop pair and a better pawn structure. Okay, interesting. I'm not going to go for anything yet. I like white's bishop. Charlie, I like white's bishop, and also it's easier for white's rooks to dominate the d-file. You think, oh, sorry, we've got 2 Charlies, haven't we? So Charlie Hill, and then other Charlie, white is slightly better as they have the bishop pair and better pawn structure. Okay, that's interesting. Does anyone else want to share with me their thoughts? Katie, I'm biased, but I still think that black is better because she can launch a kingside attack with enough initiative to win. However, I still think the position is quite even, and the deciding factor is who can launch the attack first, kingside versus queenside. Okay, so I think that's everyone that wants to say something about the position. So like I say, I only looked at this position recently. I think first thing I thought was I quite like black because I like attacking, and black's got ideas to put pressure on white's king. Black's got pawns ready to open up some lines, but I wasn't happy with the black bishop on c8, and I felt it was quite difficult to develop. Also, I was a little bit concerned about the pressure on the e pawn, so I thought the only way I can sort of do well here with black is to try and play e4 and put my knight on e5. Once I do that, I can get my bishop into the game and get my rook into the game, and then I can be very happy potentially with an attack. So this is my thinking here. If I was black, I would be looking to get e4 and knight e5. And then I think I could be comfortably happy with my position, and I think I'd prefer black. But if I can't do that, then I'm not sure, because my bishop is quite bad. And without the bishop getting into the game, it's hard to get my rook into the game. White does have the bishop pair. That's an important factor to consider. If those bishops get really active, then white is doing well. So I think on balance, in my opinion, I haven't put an engine on it, is it's probably equal, but there's lots going on in this position. So if I was black, I would really really be considering playing e4 in this position. Okay, so anyone else want to say anything? I haven't put the engine on, but we can put the engine on in a moment, see what the engine thinks. But it's not always about the engine, it's about different factors in the position. And obviously this was Katie's game, and I think what she says is very interesting. If black can get an attack, and I thought the same thing, if black can get an attack, then black's doing very well. So I think it's probably about equal, but let's have a look, see what, yeah, exactly, engine. Okay, so that's good though. So the engine's looking at e4, which is what I was really considering, because I think if we can get e4 and get our knight to e5, that solves our development problem. Also queen e7, the engine likes, and I think Bodhana said that. I guess that's a good developing move. And what else might we be considering after queen e7? I'm not sure. Maybe e4 at a later point. But if this bishop pair becomes really active, then I think black might risk being in trouble. But at the moment, it's not. And that's also why I like e4, because it blunts this bishop and gives our knight a really good square. So the point of these sessions is just to discuss the position and the factors in the position. So does anyone else want to add anything there now that we've discussed it? Does anyone have any opinions or anything they want to talk about? Because it'd be really good if you could do that and make it quite interactive. Jane, I also think white's king is slightly safer. Yeah, white's king is probably a little bit safer at this moment, although I don't think black's king can be attacked very easily. Yeah, it's good that people are considering all the different factors. So on balance, I think it's equal. And there's lots of things to think about in this position. Okay, so anything anyone wants to add before we move on to the second position? Maybe black's knight is also a problem, says Jane. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I really wanted to get e4 to work in this position. E4, and then what's white going to play? Probably knight d4, and then I wanted to get knight e5. And now, personally, I like black's position here. But it's probably equal. Yeah, it's about equal. So I don't actually know off the top of my head what Katie played, but I don't think it was e4. I can check by clicking on this, or Katie can just tell me. Okay, so yeah, this position is a very, very interesting position. Lots of things to consider, and it's a great sort of point in the game. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now this is very interesting. So I looked at this position at first, and I think Alex forgot to put his black to play, so I apologize for that. So it's black to play this position. And what do you think is going on? Tell me the factors that are important here. It'd be great if everyone could communicate as well in the chat. So what's going on here? So first answer from Gregory. And I think I'm happy for everyone to just write it in the chat to everyone. I think that makes it a bit easier. Everyone's obviously entitled to their own opinion, but it's a lot easier that way. Okay, Gregory, overall, I would say white is a whole lot better despite the material advantage, since their two extra pawns are doubled and isolated, as well as black being able to try and attack with moves like queen f7. So, okay, that's very, very interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment. Jane, I think that again, the position is equal, but there's more to it than that. Okay. Yeah, white does have two extra pawns here. Charlie Hill, white's up material, but black has a strong bishop, and it will be harder for white to convert than it could be. With that said, it looks definitely winning for white here. Oh, I wouldn't use a word like winning. More in a position like this. Better and advantage would be all right, but I wouldn't say winning. White has a slight edge, but it's still a bit unclear. From Thought Power, Charlie, I think white is better, but it's hard to play with. Okay, interesting. Anyone else want to contribute their thoughts before I give you my thoughts on the position? Kershaw, equal, because I think you might be just saying, actually, I'm not sure what you're saying there. But Hana white's a little better, but black could put the rook on f8, get the rook on f8. Jane, both bishops are not great and are blocked by pawns. Okay, anyone else want to add anything? All right, thanks, Charlie Hill. Equal because he's up 2 pawns, but they are doubled, which is a negative, is what Kushal was saying. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I don't understand your abbreviated typing. Thanks, Kushal. Okay, so yeah, obviously, material is an important factor when you're playing chess. So we can all probably add up the material and notice that black's got 5 pawns and white's got 7, but they're not good pawns. So we've got double isolated pawns here. And some ways I'd actually prefer the e5 pawn not to be on the board, because then my bishop becomes more powerful. So when I was looking at this position, I at first had to ask Alex who to move it was, but it's black to move. So if it's black to move, then that means that black can move the rook to the open file, and that rook's going to be very powerful. Also, as I think somebody said, black might consider getting the rook to the f file as well. So, I mean, I'm quite materialistic, so I probably would prefer to be white here, but it probably is about equal, because the thing is, these pawns are very bad, and I couldn't see a way to kind of improve my position as white. So let's say black goes rook d8, maybe I'd go rook f1, the queen would move somewhere. I don't really have a plan. I couldn't think of a plan here. These pawns are arguably very bad, even though they're extra pawns. And like I said before, I'd rather that pawn wasn't there so that I could start putting pressure on g7. So in this position, I was trying to think of a move. What would I play? Something like moving the c pawn would probably be terrible, because then your bishop becomes really good. How can I improve my bishop? Well, it's not that easy to do that, because it's blocked by this pawn. So if I did something like bishop d4, maybe you just, well, that loses a pawn in this exact position, but I was going to say b6, but what would you do? Maybe, well, maybe even a6 is well. Hang on. I'm thinking. So bishop d4. Because then I suppose we can go here and here, although we've not got anything to attack. Actually, maybe this is all right, because if you take the pawn, maybe we can just go here. And then we get this pawn back. So yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to get at is that I couldn't think of a plan for white, and you need to play chess with a plan. I couldn't really see any targets in black's position. So despite having the extra 2 pawns, I wouldn't sort of think that white's got a significant advantage in this position. It seems quite easy to play for black, in the sense that he can get the open file, and his bishop is better than white's bishop, because white's bishop is completely blocked at the moment. So these were the things that I was thinking about when I was looking at the position. Although having said that, I am a little bit greedy in chess, so I kind of would take white if I had a choice, but I think it's probably equal, because I couldn't think of a plan for white. If I could think of a plan and a way to improve my position with white, then I would, I'd be very happy to say white was better, but I don't think I could say white's better. So Gregory says it almost seems like a Zugsplan for white. Yeah, maybe there's not an easy plan, because I think my queen is very well placed, right in the center, which is good, but I couldn't find a way of improving my pieces. So let's have a look at what the engine thinks. Okay, so just a small advantage for white, although I think it should be black. Oh no, that's after, sorry, that's after that rook d8 move that I played. So yeah, rook d8, rook f1, and yeah, it's equal. So it's amazing to think that the position is equal, even though white's got 2 extra pawns. But the reason is, oh yeah, it's got bishop d4 that I was looking at. Oh yeah, black could take that. I didn't actually see that. But it's still, you know, the position is given as pretty, only a small advantage for white. Yeah, white's got 2 extra pawns. So lots of things to think about. Pawn structure is important. And actually, if I could get rid of the e5 pawn, I'd say white is significantly better. Do we have any questions? So it's good to discuss the position together and the different factors in the position. So any questions before we move on to the next position? Okay, doesn't look like it. So yeah, I mean, these are all games from the challengers. Oh yeah, this one I actually watched live. So this is Mad Haven against Emily, and it's back to play. And what did you think about this? So Bodhana, bishop g7, black attacks g2 pawn and castles on the king's side. Hang on, white's already castled. I'm not sure what you mean with that. Oh, sorry, black would castle on the king's side. Okay, sorry, got it. Okay, and then Gregory, white's just winning because their pieces are far more active, and black's only obvious source of counterplay is bishop g7, which can be neutralized after bishop g7, bishop takes c6, spoiling black's structure. On the other hand, I don't really see a way to really break through before black castles. And then I've got from Charlie Hill is bishop takes a6, an idea. In what position? I've got Ria just joining the meeting. Okay, any other thoughts on this? It would be great if you can all give me your thoughts before we go through it. Oh, bishop takes a7. What you mean after bishop g7? Bishop takes a7. Oh, walking into a pin. I wouldn't be rushing to play that move. Because then my bishop's pinned to my queen. But maybe we can have a look at that in a moment. Okay, I'm going to wait for some more people. Good, Katie. White's pieces are far more active than black's, and the better piece development, activity, coordination, and lack of activity for black mean white is much better. Charlie Hill. I know it looks weird, but I don't see it immediately being lost. Lol, he's talking about bishop takes a7. Okay, we can discuss that in a moment. Any other people want to contribute? Please do now. It's really good if you can write your thoughts so we can go through it together. Lots of different factors in this position. White is better, but has to keep the bishop pair. Well, I'm glad it has to keep the bishop pair, but there's no. Yeah, so that's a really important fact. I think that's Charlie Ball there. So yeah, you've got to. That's an important factor that white's got the bishop pair. So that's something you need to consider, definitely. Charlie Ball thinks white's better. Kusha, white is better. Okay, so there's a general consensus that white's better here. I take that opinion as well. The reason being that white has a safer king because white's castled, it can't be attacked easily, whereas black's king is stuck in the center and is in a pin. So bishop g7, I think, is the only move that black can play to try and unravel. And I had seen this game before, and I think in the UK chess challenge, white just took the knight and went into a slightly better endgame. Now, after bishop g7, I'd be looking to play the move c3 because we can always take that knight and get the better endgame, but there's no rush to do it. So I think white is completely better in this position. And yeah, for the reasons that you guys have said, actually, better king safety, the bishop pair, more activity, and also I suppose we've got the open file as well. So I would play c3. I wouldn't play bishop takes knight, even though I think it's a good move and it messes up black's pawn structure. I don't think there's a rush to play that. Charlie Hill was just saying bishop takes a7 here, thinking it won a pawn. I said I'd come back to him because I don't actually have an answer to that, but it does look pretty risky. And I've got a move suggestion from Kushal as well. So bishop takes a7. What would I play? I need to think now. So it is a pawn, but yeah, what happens if black just castles? Let's just castle here then. You guys can write things in the chat. Black's castled. Obviously now we're threatening to take the bishop because there's no longer a pin. Alex has just come into the room. I don't know if he's going to be helping contribute. We're just in this position. Alex and Charlie suggested bishop takes pawn. So ooh, I said it. Alex coming a bit closer. Yeah, I said it was a bit risky as well. But we've got to refute it. So I was thinking maybe we could castle here. Gregory said hi, Alex.
Hi.
So maybe castle, then we're threatening.
How are you ever going to get out of that pin?
Charlie, he's asked you, how are you ever going to get out of that pin? It's definitely dubious, lol, but I'm bad at refuting things like that.
Yeah, I think with something like this, it's more, you might not be able to sort of find an easy way to win the bishop, but it's just one of those where it just looks so difficult to ever get out of the pin that I'd only really play it if I saw a definite way out rather than a way that the piece got lost, if that makes sense. It just looks so risky, especially in a position where white's already quite a lot better. You know, you can maybe if you can't find anything else, maybe you'd look at this, but I'd certainly be tempted to look for something a bit safer than this, because you could just end up dropping the bishop.
Yeah, if you're in a good position anyway, there's no need to sort of go pawn grabbing. Says me that has done that before, but so yeah, we were just discussing this position, bishop g7, and maybe white playing c3. And most people here think white is better, for the reasons that white's got the bishop pair and white's got a safer king and slightly better activity. I agree with them.
Yeah, probably the king isn't really safer, is it, when black castles? I mean, black had to. The main thing black had to do was just get developed. I think rook fe1 probably doesn't actually threaten anything discovered, but it's a normal square for the rook. I just think c3 is just a nice move to play because it contains both the black minor pieces and contains the bishop, and importantly also it just takes away 2 squares from the knight as well, stops it jumping forward and d4, and yeah, white can probe for a long time here, which is a lot. I reckon put the engine on probably sort of plus 1.3.
Yeah, well, plus 0.9. Yeah.
So sort of equivalent, almost a pawn up basically, positional advantage.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So yeah. So most people wanted to take white there, which I think is the correct choice. We move on now to exercise 3, and this position is black to play. Oh yeah, I'll be interested to see what you think here. This one I was definitely sure about. So black to play. Let me know in the chat, Gregory. Here I think black is a little better since the only piece white can activate quickly is an eye on d2. Black also has ideas of continuing their attack with the rook lift. Charlie says bishop h3. You're going to add any more to that? And everyone else, please write your thoughts in the chat and then we'll discuss the position. Black is winning as they have an easy attack and black can't defend. You mean white can't defend, right? Charlie Hill is a threat, but I haven't calculated anything. when I was like 700. That used to be my favorite trick. Well, you're not 700 anymore. So you need to do some calculation if you're considering that.
Got the checklist open.
We've got it over here.
Yeah, what does anyone? Can anyone suggest the potential advantage of the white position? Anything that white's got going for them that the black doesn't have?
Jane, I think that black is slightly better because of white's bishop on d1, and black has a nice pawn chain leading to the king.
True. White's development's poor at the moment, and yeah, the pawn structure does sort of point towards an attack on the king side. Any positives at all to the white position?
So Charlie 9-5 looks strong with the idea of bishop h3 and a possible outpost on e3. Dylan, rook g8 or bishop h3 just get a good attack and have more active pieces. Kushal black is better because he has more space. Jane, white does have possibilities of d4. Yeah, white also has the bishop pair. I don't know if that what you were getting at, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the point is to quickly be able to spot what the imbalances are in the position, and then it's our job then to try and work out what's most important. Black has more space, open G file, white's slightly behind the development. Does have the bishop pair, and as Jane Scott pointed out, white could potentially get D4 in, open up the position. That could count for something, but it just looks like that's all very unrealistic. It just doesn't look realistic that white's going to get those trumps in play, and as I think everyone's pointed out, black's sort of play along the G file just looks pretty strong. I think that's what happened in the game.
Yeah, because I also thought bishop h3, obviously threatening this, and then white has to defend. Not many ways to defend. I guess queen e2, and then I was even looking at the possibility of rook g8, even though it sacrifices material, it just gets the job done quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully everyone thought black was better there.
Yeah, I think the general consensus was, and yeah, bishop h3 is just better for black. Okay, cool. White's dark square bishop is terrible, says Dylan, and Charlie says not completely. Knight e4 is an idea. Well, yeah, I mean, it just depends. At the moment it's not great, but it could get into the game, and if these bishops got active in the game, then white might be doing well, but at the moment they're not.
Okay. Game finished. Click on that link.
Oh, okay, I'll look at the game. Pardon?
Just might move 13 pretty quick.
Okay. And let's just looking at the game now. But black missed bishop h3 then, so that went like that. And then yeah, the rook lift that I think Gregory mentioned earlier. It's this G file being so powerful, I suppose, that's going to be. Nice little finish there. Are there any in my game? Okay, so let's move on to next, unless anyone's got any questions.
Yeah, everyone that played at the challenges has got a game. I think in these exercises, but that might be exercises 9 to 16, which will be next week.
Charlie's asking if
your game against Adam Hussein's one of the exercises, Charlie.
Okay, great. Okay, so we now move on to exercise 4. Please write your comments on this position, and then I'll give you my comments, and then we can discuss. Okay. So, Gregory, here I slightly prefer white since they have more active rook and the opportunity for tactics such as bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, c takes d5, or rook takes e7.
That's somewhat true, Greg, but you've actually missed probably the most important well, there's a feature that stands out most to me when I look at this position. It's just one feature basically that stands out like a sore thumb. I think that's the most important feature of the entire position. It's quite low down in the sort of hierarchy of factors as I've put in the materials, but I think in this position it is quite important because the other factors aren't so important. King safety is equal, materials equal.
Does anyone want to write that in the? Yeah, Jane Scott, well done. I think this is what Alex is getting at, these double pawns, which are chronically weak, and that's not going to change. A lot of people suggesting bishop takes knight, but to me that looks absolutely terrible, because then that actually encourages your opponent to sort out their pawn structure and leaves your opponent with the bishop pair. So I would not even consider that at all. Charlie Hill, I actually really like black here. It looks a little odd, but every piece has multiple good squares to develop.
That's true, Charlie. So the black pieces are very active. Black's got no problems at all in terms of activity and finding good squares. But actually, neither does white, really. I suppose it's a little bit more difficult, but there's two features here. One is this chronic sort of weakness black's got. And the problem with those pawns is it's we call it a long-term feature. It's a static feature. It's not going to go away. Whereas black's sort of slight advantage in development could disappear. You imagine if white sort of gets the knight from B1 to F3, and basically completes his development, then black's no longer got this advantage in development, and this pawn weakness is still around. So we call that static versus dynamic factors. If you've got a dynamic advantage, i.e. leading the development, you need to make that count quickly because it could disappear. Whereas a static disadvantage like material or structure can stay around for the whole game. So when you've got a sort of static advantage like white does here, white just needs to stay solid, try not to let black's initiative get too dangerous, complete his development, and this long-term pawn weakness on c7 and c6 in the endgame, for example, could be quite decisive. So it's white's a little bit awkward for white to develop around this knight. But I think if we start with knight d2, intending knight e4, for example, I don't think it's not really easy for black to create any real threats. I think so. I think white has to be a little bit careful, but white's a bit better.
Yeah, I thought that I preferred white if I could develop. So I was a bit nervous about the knight and bishop not being in the game. So I thought if I go knight d2 and get my bishop out, then I'm better. But development is important. If I can get swaps and pieces off without damaging improving my opponent's pawn structure, then I think I'm doing pretty well. Because the endgame is going to be a lot better for white because of these pawns. And we can work around this knight, in my opinion. Let's just see what the engine thinks. Okay, so it has small advantage to white after knight d2.
But white played bishop takes d5 in the game. So see what the evaluation is.
Because a few people said that in the chat, and that was, so that's better for black. Yeah, because that didn't make any sense to me, because you basically, you get rid of the chronic weakness in your opponent's position. You leave your opponent with the bishop pair, and
you're still behind in development.
Yeah.
So basically, the computer thinks after bishop takes d5, white's gone from plus 0.6 to minus 0.4. So basically, the computer thinks bishop takes d5 is the equivalent of blundering a pawn.
I kind of agree. Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense. You sort of you're giving away the only advantage in your position, and black's probably a bit better now.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be white here anymore, but I would want to be white in this position. Does anyone want to ask any questions about that before we move on, or do we all understand that?
Like I said, there's not necessarily it's not really necessarily about the right or wrong answer. It's just sort of thinking about the thought process of how to make decisions. Because after a move like knight d2, the game can still go either way. Black's active and can create threats, and white's going to have to play well to exploit this weakness. But it's just the thought process really of sort of thinking about what's good and bad about your position, your opponent's position, and can it help you find a plan. So yeah, so I think White or George, I think it was George Chen, he took on d5 in the game, but well, Jay, I think the point of knight d2 is we need to get developed, and I don't want to play knight c3 because it just allows black to capture on c3 and strand and saddle us with weak pawns as well. Shot on the board.
Yeah, so it's just about getting the knight into the game. So if we go knight c3, then I guess black can just take, and then we've thrown away any advantage that we had.
Oh, so now we've got these bad c pawns as well. So although knight d2 blocks the bishop, I'm not going to keep it on d2. I'm going to come to f3 or e4 next.
Yeah, I was looking at maybe going to e4.
Probably e4. So it's just a developing move without sort of allowing black to cause us a weakness, even though it takes one extra move to do. You just got to be. It comes down to judgment, really. I mean, sometimes you can't get away with moving this piece twice. Black will be able to sort of attack you too quickly, but if you look at black's pieces, they're not really pointing at a king yet. They're not hitting h2 or f2, so it doesn't really look like black's going to be able to do anything very, very quickly. But if the position was different, then maybe we wouldn't be able to get away with this this extra move. You know, the bishop was already on d6, for example. I'd be thinking twice because you got to start calculating queen h4 and things. So it's just specific to the position. But I think here White can get away with knight d2 and put the knight on a better square next.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good question. No, I need to take that off. Oh. Okay. Pardon?
I got the car keys.
By the door, yeah. Okay, so black to play in this position, and yeah, if you just let me know your thoughts on this position. I thought this was a very interesting position. So Gregory, in this position, I think black is actually slightly better despite the complete lack of development due to the two minor pieces on minors on the d file. I'll personally play knight c6 as black because the bishop cannot move due to losing d4 knight. After knight takes c6, I play rook takes d6 when white saves the knight. Okay, that's interesting. Charlie Hill, bishop c5, and there are nice moves for black. Katie, I think that white is better because after b5, white can play rook c7. Black is cramped, his pieces are on back rank, and most important thing for white is not to let black unravel his position. Jane Scott, I think that white is better because of white's strong development advantage. Also like white's rooks. Okay, anyone else want to add anything? I mean, my first thought here was that I do have an extra pawn as black, so if I can develop these pieces, then I'm very happy. But at the moment, it feels a little bit cramped. But I would fancy my chances at trying to develop my minor pieces, improve my position, and then be a pawn up. But then I came around to thinking, well, what can I move? Because it's black to move here. And, you know, if I can get these out and maybe, I don't know, a pawn move to give my king some safety, then I should be better. But these minor pieces are very dominating right in the center of the board. I think somebody suggested b5, which does look interesting because then you can maybe try and go bishop b7. Not sure that I actually came up with a move. I wrote some notes when I was looking at these positions. Let me see what I put here for a move for black. I was struggling to find one. I did do knight d7 here because I need to desperately get some pieces out. If it were white's move, rook c7. Yeah, rook c7 does look good because obviously, I mean, Jane was saying if it was white to play here, but I think rook c7 anyway looks like a good move. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I find it hard to find a way of black developing comfortably. So on that basis, I evaluated this as quite equal. White's got complete domination of the half open file and the open file, good central pieces, and black is seriously behind in development. So I did come up with knight d7, but I'm not too sure that gives black an advantage. It's just trying to get some pieces out. So I think I would give this evaluation as equal based on what I've said. Let's see what Mr. Engine thinks. Okay, he prefers black because it's quite greedy like me in terms of material, but a knight d7, so it's minus 0.8. But we've got to be careful because it's quite easy in these positions to think you're getting out of the trouble and then suddenly there's a tactic or something. So bishop c7, e8, and black's got a small advantage, but the most important thing to think about here is how we're going to develop our minor pieces. And obviously if the bishop comes out, then we risk losing one of our losing our extra pawn. Suggestion in the chat of bishop d7 here, but I suppose that just loses the pawn back straight away, and then I would prefer white, despite the engine saying it's equal. I would prefer to be white then, so I would want to try and keep on to the extra pawn if I was black here. So yeah, this is definitely an interesting position. Any other comments on this position? Is e5 just bad? I don't know. e5, can't it be taken? Bishop takes. Are you going to go f6? Oh, but then I suppose we just take. Yeah, I think you just. The thing is, we're a pawn up, so I'll.
Oh, sorry, that was really weird. Just after e5, bishop e5. Looks like f6 just loses on the spot to bishop takes b8 and then knight c6.
Oh, I didn't see that. You mean if they play rook takes?
Yeah, why wouldn't you play rook takes? But actually, there is actually a move here.
Well, yeah, I was going to take the knight. Oh no, my bishop's hanging. Oh.
Black can move. Black moves the bishop.
Oh, what? I don't know.
Double attack on.
Oh yeah. I was thinking I would just take the knight. I forgot that this was on, but so we're looking at this just loses because of the pin, but then because we've kept the engine on, the engine's just told us we can just move the bishop, and then we've actually got a fork. Gosh, no, I didn't see that either. Well, okay, anyway, yeah, that's interesting, but yeah, so yeah, e5 is bad, but what I was going to say is, like, we're a pawn up and our only big problem is development, so we need to focus on development. If we just give the pawn back, then in my opinion, white's probably better. Yeah, Stockfish is showing off, Charlie. Okay, let's just move on to the next one now then. I need to take this off. Right, so black to play. And what is going on here? So let's just flip it around. And what did? So Gregory's written a nice answer there. Black has a little more kingside space and a potential attack. But white could go for an attack themselves since they have the bishop pair. One option would be bishop h6 followed by e5, sacrificing a pawn, but opening up the bishops and the e-rook. However, as it's black to move something like f4 to stop the bishops and encroach further on the white king would probably be good. Yeah, that's a good explanation. In fact, when I was looking at the position, I was thinking about f4 as well, to try and block this bishop out and create some attacking chances. Anyone else got anything they'd like to say before we discuss the position in more detail? Charlie's saying e5.
So the idea is not to suggest moves. The idea is to try and evaluate the position in words, basically, sort of who you think's better, why, or at least sort of what the pros and cons in the positions, what's the and sort of what's sort of important. This is quite a tough one, actually. I'm not really sure myself.
Yeah, remember our factors: king safety, initiative, material, space, quality, and structure. We're not going to have a huge amount of time, so I know some people have got 4 NCL they've got to go for shortly. So as I've only not got anything. Let's
just start with a good practice to get into is just to think about what's different in the position. So what has one side got that the others don't, and then once we've listed those, we can think about if they're important or not. So materials obviously the first thing to always check. So what's going on with the material?
You can write it in the chat if you want.
Yeah, so Charlie's pointed out that white is the bishop pair. Sometimes that can be an advantage, not always. In open positions, the bishop pair's normally an advantage. Sometimes in closed positions, it can be a disadvantage. Who shall thinks black has an attack? Thought Power thinks white has a large advantage. Ria's pointing out that it's a closed position. That's true. So, so the white does have the bishop pair. Not so clear that that's going to be very active. Look at the activity of the pieces. Black's minor pieces. The knight's quite restricted at the moment, I'd say. So that you're definitely looking to try and find a nice stable square for that knight. If you imagine a scenario, for example, if the white d pawn moves and the knight could land on c5 or e5, but that doesn't look too likely yet. I think it's really quite a complicated dynamic position, and I think I personally would. I don't think I'd mind to take either side.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually my bishop is not great because it's a bit blocked and my knight's not great. So I was thinking I prefer white. If I was playing black, I would try and block the position up a bit more, because if white gets an open position, those bishops are going to be very, very powerful. Yeah,
I think the problem with f4 is that by releasing the tension in the position, maybe, I don't know, then your minor pieces, it's really hard then to find any goofy minor pieces where maybe it's quite useful to keep that tension for now. I don't know. So
the pieces are all just dead. Well, we're going to have to find a way of improving them. The other thing I was thinking about is to try and put pressure on. It was a bit desperate, but try and put pressure on c4, because in these positions that's often white's weakness, but probably too slow to start trying to move my bishop to a6 and get my knight to a5. It might take a long time.
You could think about c5.
Yeah.
That could open the c4.
Yeah, c5 is a possibility. So yeah, I know some people have got to go for foreign CL soon. So let's put the engine on and see what the engine thinks. Okay, the engine says it's pretty much equal, minus 0.3, and the engine's interested in f4. But
yeah, the engine wants to lock up with f4 and e5, doesn't it?
Yeah, don't worry about Hannah. Good luck in foreign CL, and yeah, thanks for joining. Okay, so yeah, I think it's a very interesting position. I think either side could win. Very, very interesting. But yeah, lots of factors to think about there.
Spend a whole hour on this position, I think.
Yeah, we could spend a lot of time. It's 8 we're going through tonight, is it?
Well, it's been an hour though.
Yeah, we might have to stop, because I know some people have got to leave because they've got foreign CL at past. So we can carry on the final 2 that we're going to go through tonight in the next session, because I don't want to rush. But yeah, some really good comments coming through, which is absolutely fantastic. So do make sure you've written lots of notes and you've gone through your checklist of, the factors: king safety, initiative, material, space, quality, and structure. And I don't know if you guys have been filling out the checklist, but I think it's really important to do that either in your head or on a piece of paper when you're evaluating a position. So yeah, thanks very much for joining tonight, and I hope that was useful, and we'll see you soon. Good luck if you're playing foreign CL, which starts shortly.
Bye.
Bye for now.